my beautiful plant people. If we haven't met before, I am Sam, the proud owner of Plant Collector Melbourne, and today we have a little bit of a different video, and I'm hoping this will be valuable to you guys. And today's video is a new series that I would like to call What's Wrong with My Plant. This is when I reach out to the community and grab some videos of individuals that may be having problems with their plants or might just want some advice. So without further ado, let's get into it. So as you guys can imagine, lots of people come into PCM in various different stages of their plant journey, whether that's they've just started getting interested in plants, whether they are hobbyists, or they've been collectors for many, many years. Many people come into the store and I get to play a little bit of plant doctor, and they will be able to show me photos or even just talk me through what plant they have and what they are currently experiencing and any kind of problems they are having. And that's why I thought of the idea, what if we did a What's Wrong with My Plant series? So here we are. So I'm hoping this gives you guys a little bit of sprinkles of knowledge and also being able to come with me through the process of how I kind of navigate plant problems. And today's video, we have beautiful Nell, and I actually met Nell several years ago, even when we had our store in Brunswick. And Nell is just absolutely gorgeous, a super passionate plant individual with like the best smile, and you guys will see. And I managed to reach out to Nell because Nell was like, Sam, I've got a problem with one of my plants and I was hoping that you would be able to guide me, help me, advise me, etc. And I said, can we please make a video of it? So she very kindly did some videos, which I'm so happy that she did. Let me introduce you to Nell and also what problems she's currently experiencing with her plants.
Hi Sam, I hope you're well. Before I start, I want to say thank you so much for being such a lovely member of the indoor plant community. We love you so much, and because of that, you were the first person that I thought of when I knew that I needed a little plant doctor for the day. Behind me I have my beautiful 6-year-old Monstera that I love and adore, but she is quite old, and unfortunately my first ever plant made a couple of mistakes, one of them being staking her from a teeny tiny baby, which means that now that she's mature, she is very top heavy and her base stem is quite weak. Unfortunately, I've done lots of staking, but I've gotten to the stage where I'm not sure what I should do, if I need to chop and propagate, but yeah. I thought I would send a video, show you and share, and hopefully not only help me, but maybe some other people who've got similar problems with their plants. Thanks, Sam.
Isn't she the cutest? Oh, I just love Nell. Okay, so let's see this beautiful Monstera. I can see it in the background, but let's dive in a bit deeper.
So this right here is my beautiful Monstera. She's
so
just
gorgeous.
got a new leaf, yay. And as you can see, it's quite mature. Currently, it's on 2 stakes here, so all of her new growth is very strong, mature, sturdy. You can see it's very, large. Like, here's my hand, like I can grip it. But right down here, from when she was a tiny little baby, she has very, very small stem. I've lost some leaves over time, but it is quite weak, and progressively as she's gotten larger, the stem has expanded naturally, of course, and so now it's quite obvious that the top here needs support because the base is too weak to support her. So yeah, wondering what I should do, whether I should cut it and try again. Propagation, I'm not sure, but yeah, I'm really hoping that you can help me because she's beautiful. I love her a lot. She brings me lots of joy, and I love having such a big, beautiful statement piece in my house. Thanks. Bye. Love you, Sam.
Love you too, Nell. Okay. Wow. So I have a lot of things going on in my mind, and I think the best way to show you guys kind of how I process this is we are going to go through what I like to call my step-by-step kind of protocol in how I get to some advice or trying to figure out what is wrong with the plant. So my friends, what I like to typically do is I have like certain points or certain things that I like to think about or ask the individual based on all of these things. I kind of collate all of the information together, think about it, and then from there I'm able to give my best advice that I possibly can. And for some of you taking a look at this video, you could probably jump to what you would advise, but what I think really helps when giving plant advice is by giving or getting all of the information, putting it together, and then coming up with a solution. So that's how I kind of problem solve. So let us start by the first thing that I like to think about is watering. So here I like to ask the question, how often are you watering, and like the frequency and how they are watering, because surprisingly a lot of people don't actually water their plants properly. Some people will have like a cup of water and be like, oh, 1 cup is enough for this plant and all of that jazz. So just making sure that they are watering properly and really watering all of the soil, all of the media, and then talking about whether that is like frequent or infrequently happening, etc., etc. The next one that I like to talk about is media, and I think media and watering definitely come hand in hand when it comes to plant care and plant health. So I like to ask them what media they're using, trying to figure out whether it is something really dense or something that is really not dense. So, and I can see from Nell's video that she's actually using quite airy things, so I can definitely see perlite, I can definitely see soil, but I think the aeration is really good, particularly for Monstera, deliciosa, because they tend to rot. The next point I like to talk about is, or ask, is pots. So what material or type of pot, maybe the size, trying to gauge whether like it is porous or non-porous. The next one is roots. And so just checking that the individual has checked its roots recently. Are the roots healthy? Are they white? Are they plump? Are they growing actively? Or are they like brown and rotting and not as healthy? So there is roots. I like to ask about the environment, and I would say like you have the individual and their routine and what they do with their plant, and also I would say that the environment is equally as important to consider. And so in your environment or wherever the plant is situated, I'm asking about light, so whether it is low, bright, moderate, direct, and indirect. With humidity, whether it is high, low, moderate. We've got airflow, again, good, bad, moderate. And lastly, temperature. So again, it could be warm, is it cold? In where it is sitting, does it change a lot? Is it constant? Is there a heater? Is there a cooler nearby? Things like that. Next is pest damage. And I do think that I have to do another video on pest damage because I feel like a lot of individuals may not actually know what pest damage kind of looks like. So I will definitely get onto that for y'all. But in the meantime, what does pest damage kind of like generally look like? And I would say that if there are like teeny tiny holes, or maybe even big holes, because sometimes you can get like a little leaf and something has bitten into it and then that hole becomes gigantic, particularly with anthurium, because they start off so small and then exponentially get bigger. So definitely holes. Are we looking for like a color, like a discoloration? Typically for thrips, it's like this orangey browny damage. So whether something like that, even looking out for little webs, and that's just like a really great indicator of spider mites and things like that. The next one is infection. So here I would typically look for yellow margins, whether that is like segmental, or if it's kind of just like on the tips of the leaves. If there are black spots, And is it like progressively getting worse? Things like that. Next one is nutrition. So what are we feeding the plant and how often? It is actually so interesting to me that nutrition is just not something that people really ask about. A lot of people just don't realize that they need to feed their plant. So I definitely always ask that question. And it could be one of the reasons why plants go south. So that is a great question to ask. And last but not least, which I think is like the main contributor for this video, is support. Does the plant need or have support in some form? All right, so when it comes to Nell's situation with her gorgeous, beautiful, big Monstera, there are three kind of standout problems that kind of come to me. And number one is that there's a problem in supporting a large plant purely because it is incredibly heavy. Two is that she mentions a weak stem, which can be a bit stressful because it might snap, like if someone knocks it, or it just gets too top heavy easily. And the last one, which she hasn't mentioned, but I just have this inkling that there's also maybe a space concern, maybe not so much like in the moment right now, but I guess like looking forward, it could potentially be a problem. So my friends, now that I've kind of shown you what I like to incorporate and think about, hopefully you'll be able to even use this and replicate it with your plants. If something ever goes wrong, you kind of have these like things to be considerate about. Ask yourself these questions, and that way you'll be able to problem solve further. So that's kind of just my kind of recipe that I like to do, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. So, but let us get to, I guess, the recommendation, the advice, and my way of guiding Nell through this problem. I do have about 2 options and then another one that's kind of a bit optional. And for me, really this is the first one, and I think that this is what I would recommend. Please keep in mind that with a video, it is a little bit difficult to really nail the advice or the guidance purely because I wasn't able to ask Nell all of the questions that I would typically do. But with that being said, there is still lots of information in this video. So even just taking a look of how healthy the plant is, I can see the media that she kind of uses in the spot that it is, so that the light and things like that. But of course, there is holes in the information. But also in saying that, this is what I would suggest. So I would actually suggest to repot the plant. And when we repot the plant, I'm thinking that depending on the roots, you could either put it in like a bigger pot or the same pot. So bigger pot would be my preference if there is a lot of root ball. And people are probably wondering like what's the difference between having a small root ball versus a bigger root ball. It's just that because Monstera are incredibly susceptible to root rot, you don't want to do a really big pot because then the soil or the media stays wet for too long and it has a higher chance of rotting. So I would say that when you are repotting, my dear Nell, to take a look at the roots to see, 1, if they're healthy, and 2, like if there's any rot, things like that, that you need to treat or trim off the roots. So repotting, if we are able to repot into a bigger pot, I do recommend, again, small root ball, we'll keep it in the current size that it's in. Big root ball, definitely like size it up just a little bit because it is a beautiful big plant and the more room it has, the better. But here is what I would suggest, particularly because she mentions, or Nell mentions, that she loves her big plant. And so we could definitely go down the route of propagation, but if I were Nell, I really love the statement piece in her home, as she has said, so I personally wouldn't do any propagations. So I would actually, when I'm repotting the plant, the very, like, I'd say the weak stem part, you can either like lie it down horizontally just so that it has less of a chance to snap, and having like the stronger part of the stem actually climb onto a pole, whether that is like a totem or a moss pole. I would personally suggest a totem just because I find that the totem, particularly ones that are like that guy on the Monstera. So I'll give you guys a little bit of a quick look. It just is a lot more sturdy when it comes to supporting. So yes, the aerial roots cannot grow into it, but I think at this stage it's not about supporting the aerial roots. I think it's actually supporting the weight of the plant. And so I would do a really sturdy, heavy totem, or like a bark totem, to help it support. And if, let's say that you can't actually increase the size of the pot, let's just say that the root ball is really small, and if we do a bigger pot, it might rot, keep the same size, but I would actually pot the Monstera lower. And so the stem, or the thin stem, is under the soil. My only caveat in this is, it's probably not the highest recommendation, is that just be careful of stem rot if you are going to plant more of the stem into the soil. And so with that being said, if you are repotting, try not to do a denser mix if you are putting the stem into the soil. And then when you are tying the beautiful Monstera that you have, I would use like Velcro, or I would use maybe twine. I think twine can be a little bit more dangerous. I think that the Velcro really helps secure it in place and in a gentle way. So if you've got twine at home, feel free to use that. But I guess my highest recommendation would be something like Velcro, so that it just stays in place and safely. I guess the reason for that is that if you use twine, it's quite thin, and if you use like the Velcro, it has just a little bit more surface area for one, support, and two, it doesn't like strangle the plant as much. I just think of it, if you do something a bit too tight with a thin string, it just feels like it suffocates the plant a little bit more than with something a little bit more gentler with more surface area to support. So that's just in my brain. I mentioned before that technically Nell could also propagate the plant, but there's some questions that I have in my brain of just like, so if you are propagating it, and something that I don't particularly think a lot of people take into consideration when they are propagating is that, do you have the capacity, whether that is like time or energy, to look after propagation? And that question definitely is pointed to me when I do propagations, because there are so many times where I have a lot of my plants, I'm like, we are doing a prop session and I have all the best intentions and I cut up heaps and heaps of plants, but the problem ends up being that I don't actually look after them. I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, and just being like realistic with yourself of whether propagating is a good idea and whether you have the space for it as well. So we also mentioned that space could potentially be a problem in the future. And so I'm going to give you guys advice that I don't think a lot of people actually would give. And I think it's because there's this mentality that with your plants, you want to grow them incredibly optimally. You want them to be big and lush. And while that is all well and good, there is definitely like a reality check that once you have a big collection, if you are growing them optimally, they are growing really fast and getting really big quickly. And so with the Monstera, I think they size up incredibly fast, and if you do not have the space for them, you are probably going to run into a problem sooner rather than later. And so here's my thing that I don't think a lot of people would think about, is that you can grow your plants suboptimally, so it slows down the rate of their growth. And that might be actually incredibly useful for you if you lack space. So the things that you would be doing is the flip coin of, let's optimize things, like let's give it the most optimal conditions, humidity, light, everything, yada, 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 and fertilizer too. You can actually do the opposite. So you can, I wouldn't say complete opposite, because some plants don't love the complete opposite, the ones that are a bit more finicky, but Monstera, very hardy, very sturdy. And so you can actually put them into a different spot, whether that is like lower light, that has lower humidity. You can feed less often. So for example, I like to feed my plants like once a week. Then you might actually want to prolong that. You might want to fertilize once every 2 weeks, once a month. Just think about more the space and whether that if you can accommodate and actually want a really big plant. And so just going off the big list that I kind of just like drew out for you guys, I'm also going to give beautiful Nell some more advice or just some more things to even think about. So one is pest management. Not that I can see on the plant. Actually, now that I think of it, the video looks incredibly healthy. This Monstera looks shiny, beautiful, delightful. I don't believe that there would be any like pests, but it is definitely something to think about is pest management. So how often are you using pesticides? Are you using it as a preventative? Are you doing it like I personally like to do pesticides at least once a month, and that way I can just like jot it down in my diary and don't have to think about it. And not only that, but even just inspecting plants, I think that it's a really good tool or good routine to be able to check up on your plants every so often to check that there are no pests either on the leaves or in the soil or around. So this one I don't think Nell will need to do because the leaves looked so shiny and so healthy, but particularly when plants start to get really big or when they're indoors, that if they don't have a lot of airflow, they do collect dust. So just making sure that you are wiping down the plants if they end up getting dusty. And the reason why or maybe like the analogy I like to have to explain this to people is that imagine your leaves as your solar panel, because the leaves are the thing that absorb the sunlight to create energy for the plant. And so you can imagine a solar panel that is clear, that is absorbing like 100%, looking great, compared to if it was dusty and that's almost like there is a film or it's not super transparent and it just blocks out some of the sunlight. So it's not incredibly efficient. So I would recommend dusting off your plants every so often, particularly when you see there's a lot of buildup. Let's talk about media. So in Nell's case, as I mentioned before, it looks airy, it looks great, it looks like a great mix for Monstera. I would just say that I would ask Nell what her watering schedule is like, and is she more like an overwaterer or a underwaterer? Because the media really will either like make life harder or make life easier for you depending on each. So if I would say, depending on the seasons of my life, I can be an incredible underwaterer when I'm incredibly busy, and I am a big overwaterer naturally. I think that if I'm not very busy, I tend to overwater. And so I would say that if you are an overwaterer doing things that are a lot more draining, a lot more airy, so things like perlite, scoria, let me think, what else? Charcoal and orchid bark. So things that are really chunky, airy, that is more suited to people that kind of overwater. And if you are more of a underwaterer, you can do things that are a lot more dense or have water retaining properties. So you might actually put more soil in terms of like the ratio into your media. You might put things like cocoa peat or cocoa coir, even though I don't personally use those things. Kind of like mixing your own media definitely will help you depending on your kind of natural routine or what you typically lean towards. So a message to our beautiful Nell is that thank you so much for sending this video to us. I hope that this kind of helps you, and even if you don't end up using my recommendations, I hope it gives you some kind of like process of what to do next or some guidance. So that pretty much wraps up this week's video. I really hope that this video gives you guys some guidance, or even just gets your brain kind of thinking of problem solving and how you can kind of put these little, I guess, questions into plant health, and hopefully that will be able to help you in your plant journey. So let us chat down in the comments. Let me know what you guys think, and if this video was actually helpful. I'm very much more than happy to do more of these videos and somehow getting more people involved in the community and onto this channel. Let me know if this was helpful for you. If you've been enjoying this video, I'm going to link a video up above that will hopefully also help you on your journey right here. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye! Mwah!